South Africa's constitution, it's so much more than just a legal document. People call it the nation's birth certificate, this revolutionary text that was born from the ashes of apartheid. But now, 30 years later, this celebrated document is right at the center of a really fierce national debate. Okay, let's get into it. So, to really get what's going on, you first have to understand just how revered this constitution is. I mean, as it gets close to its 30th birthday, the ruling ANC is calling on everyone to celebrate it as a world-class achievement. So that's the starting point, right? We're talking about a text that is held in incredibly high regard, not just at home, but around the globe. All right, so here's how we're going to break this whole thing down. We'll start with why it's such a cornerstone for democracy. Then we'll dive into the big controversy, this idea of rights for everyone. After that, we'll look at the criticism it's facing from the public, compare its promise to today's reality, and then we'll get to the massive question, is it time to revise the supreme law? Okay, first things first, we have to set the scene. This constitution didn't just appear out of nowhere. It was literally forged in the fire of a radical transition, designed to be the complete and total opposite of the oppressive apartheid system it replaced. Yeah, and this quick timeline really puts it all into perspective. You have that historic 1994 election, right? But it wasn't instant. It took 2 whole years of intense, tough negotiations before President Nelson Mandela finally signed it into law in 1996. For decades, it was the nation's anchor. But today, well, that anchor is being seriously tested. Now, this is where it gets really powerful. Just look at the sheer ambition in the preamble. It's not just a legal text. It's basically a manifesto for a brand new nation. We're talking about healing deep divisions, building a society on social justice, improving lives. These aren't just dry legal clauses. They're huge, aspirational goals. And that's the key thing to remember. It's got this incredible dual power. On one hand, it's the supreme law. No other law can contradict it, period. But just as importantly, it's deeply symbolic. It really is the nation's birth certificate, the official document that marked the start of a free and democratic South Africa. So, with all that incredible history and promise, how on earth did we get to today's fiery debate? Well, we're about to pivot right into the heart of the conflict. And believe it or not, a lot of it boils down to just one crucial word. And wow, this quote from commentator Barney Mthombothi it hits hard, doesn't it? It perfectly captures that growing frustration, that painful gap between the lofty ideals written on a page and the harsh realities of daily life where so many people are just trying to get by. And here it is. This is the absolute flashpoint. The Bill of Rights, the very soul of the Constitution, says it applies to everyone, not every citizen, everyone. The courts have been crystal clear that this means all people inside the country's borders, and that single word has become the epicenter of the storm. So let's break down the two sides of this. Critics will look at phrases like the preamble's "South Africa belongs to all who live in it" and argue it's being misused to protect undocumented residents. They'll point to court orders telling schools to enroll undocumented kids and say it's straining resources. But the defenders have a powerful comeback. They say the preamble is about setting a tone of inclusivity, and more importantly, the Constitution demands that the best interests of the child come first. You simply can't deny a child an education. The harm is just too severe. And this debate isn't just happening quietly in courtrooms. Not at all. It's exploding out in the open, online, and on the streets, and it's fueled by some really raw and unfiltered frustration. Hop online, and this sentiment is often blunt and angry. This person here calls the Constitution a farce, claiming it protects immigrants more than South Africans. And trust me, that's a feeling you see expressed over and over again. And the criticism doesn't stop with the document. The very institutions meant to uphold it are getting hammered. The South African Human Rights Commission, the SHRC, is a frequent target. Critics say its focus has shifted from citizens to foreigners. All this frustration is boiling over into direct calls for action. This isn't just a complaint anymore. It's a demand to completely rewrite the Constitution, to, in this person's words, liberate the people. And this public anger is translating directly into political action. You have Herman Mashaba's party, Action SA, proposing actual constitutional amendments to limit rights for undocumented foreigners. And this all taps into a much older, deeper critique, this idea that the Constitution gave Black South Africans political power, sure, but didn't fundamentally change the unequal economy left over from apartheid. Which brings us to the absolute core of the tension, this massive, yawning gap between the Constitution's transformative promise
and the reality that millions of people are living every day.
You see, at the heart of this was a big idea called transformative constitutionalism. It sounds academic, but it's simple. It's the project of actively using the law to dismantle the legacy of apartheid and build a new, just society from the ground up. It was meant to be an engine for real change. And man, when you put the promise side by side with the reality, it is just stark. The goal, stated right there, is to improve the quality of life. But the reality? Deep inequality, staggering unemployment, and failing public services. That's the gap that's fueling so much of this anger. Now, to be fair, many legal experts will tell you to hang on a second. They argue the Constitution was never meant to be a one-way street, just handing out rights. It's supposed to be a balance, pairing those rights with the duties and responsibilities that come with citizenship. The big debate is whether that balance has been completely lost. So, all of this leads to the monumental, unresolved question that the entire nation is facing today. What is the path forward? On one side, you have the defenders. Their argument is clear. Don't blame the Constitution. The document itself is sound, even sacred. The real problems, they say, are failures in governance. Things like weak border control, poor service delivery, and just a plain lack of political will to actually enforce the law. But on the other side, you have the critics. They argue the Constitution was a flawed compromise from the very beginning. They believe it's failing to deliver real economic justice, that it's being misused, and that the only solution is to fundamentally revise it to put South African citizens first. 30. It's a powerful number. 30 years after its birth, the document that defined a new, free nation is itself on trial. Not in a courtroom, but in the court of public opinion. The future of South Africa's birth certificate is no longer something people take for granted. And so this leaves us with the ultimate question, one that's not just for politicians or lawyers, but for the entire nation. Should South Africa revise its most important book to meet the challenges and realities of today?